Another winter has come and gone, if you call what we had the last 4 months winter. And it is time to talk about how my winter weather forecast did for the Willamette Valley. I'm meteorologist Tanis Leach, and let's get started with our water year rainfall predictions. I forecasted near to slightly below normal, which is a little bit of a odd forecast when you hear of a La Nina winter, which is what it is officially going to go into. Through the records as where typically it trends to a little bit above normal. But this proves that El Nino and La Nina are just a guide, not a rule. 30 to 38 inches at PDX compared to a 37-inch average was my prediction. I upped it to 31 to 39 inches in the December update. And in Eugene, I predicted 33 to 42 inches compared to an average of about 41 inches. Percentage-wise, these are about the same. It's just rounding differences. In years past, when I've done this verification, I haven't graded my April forecast, and technically I'm not still well, this year either, but I will touch on it because I did take a look at it. I did surprisingly well, so despite it being an 11-month forecast. I maintained the 30 to 38 inch rainfall prediction starting from last April, so that's pretty good that I'm at least starting to do that. We'll see if I'm as accurate this year, even though it's supposed to not be as accurate. The trendcast for PDX is 40.03 inches compared to a 37-inch average. Now, the water year goes till the end of September. Eugene, 29.24 inches, so about 11 inches below average. So, not great for Eugene in terms of drought situations and water usage for the summertime. PDX looking a little better, but the lack of snowpack is not going to help things. And that's a pretty sharp divide in the Willamette Valley, which made grading this a little bit tougher than normal because PDX is above that margin of error, but Eugene looks to be below that margin of error. So what I'm doing is I'm leaning towards a hit. I'm counting as such because of that sharp divide and because the All Valley average is right at about 95% of normal. If Portland does fall within this margin of error, I'll still take a look at that All Valley average. If it still falls within that percentage margin of error, I think I'll still count it. If it doesn't, I'll drop it to a partial hit. Average wintertime temperature. This was a low confidence prediction. In October, I predicted to be below average by no more than 2.5 degrees. In December, I updated it to be within a degree of average. And for comparison, last April, I predicted above normal up to 2.5 degrees. Now, as a side note, last April, I did predict it would be high end ENSO neutral weak El Nino. So that does lead into predictions in general versus the actual and what I predicted in October, December was a cold neutral or weak La Nina. The actual at PDX was 2.01 degrees above average, and Eugene 9/10 of a degree above average. So Eugene just snuck in under that margin of error in December, and frankly, by rule, I have to count that as a partial hit. I really don't. I'm just going to be honest. It does not feel like a partial hit because the reason why Eugene snuck in under wasn't because we got any sort of significant cold snap. It was because January had a weeks on end of what we in the industry called fake cold or inversions where the cold air is just trapped at the surface, but you actually have a ridge overhead that if it did mix out properly, it'd probably be about 10 degrees above average. Lowest wintertime temperature forecasted to be below 20 degrees in October. December, I updated it to 16 to 24 degrees. Last April, I forecasted above 20 degrees. So all over the place again, showing the lower confidence that I normally have for these forecasts. Actual PDX 22 degrees, in Eugene 18 degrees. Vancouver, McMinnville also got into the teens. I did not have Corvallis data for this year as I didn't record it during the fake cold snap. that had these lowest temperatures. Also, this uses only official sites. I did notice broader team support using unofficial sites and home weather stations based on reports that I've seen in the weather groups that I am a part of. So I'm counting as a partial hit for October mainly because one of the official stations is in the teens and a couple of the other or official but not the two big ones also had teens. Full hit December because virtually every station was between 16 and 24. Windstorms forecasted 50 to 60 miles per hour at PDX, which the conversion equivalent's 45 to 55 in Eugene. I reduced it to 45 to 55 at PDX, which conversion equivalent's about 43 to 52 in Eugene in the December forecast. Eugene typically has its peak gusts be a little bit lower than that at PDX. That's why I'm doing the conversion here. Actual PDX, it was right smack dab in the middle, the October prediction, and on the upper end of the December prediction at 55 miles per hour, and Eugene, it was at 49 miles per hour. Interesting thing is that this came out of the west. It was a squall line that actually produced this peak wind gust due to a sharp cold front. The last time a south windstorm had the strongest gust in a winter season was 2022 to 2023. I don't know if that's the longest on record. I haven't done the deep dive yet, but that is pretty unusual to go 3 years in a row where it's either been out of the east or out of the west. By this definition, this is about as good of a forecast hit as you can get on a long range forecast. Most active time, I forecasted a double peak in December and February. One thing I will note going in the future is if you've watched my past verification videos, I have not just counted when has it snowed or when is the correct pattern for snow. I have counted when windstorms have happened, at least the significant ones, not like the 35 mile per hour windstorms that we get about once a month during the wintertime. And I've also haven't counted floods in the past, but because we got a significant one for some areas this year, I'm counting that as well. So because of that, December is definitely considered the peak time. February, it was the correct pattern for a snow setup. It just, we didn't get all the ingredients to line up properly for snow. So I am counting it as a forecast hit. Does not feel like one if you just treat it as, oh, that's when snow is going to happen. Yet, yes, the most likely to be active and most likely have snow, but that's not a guarantee, especially when I'm also having to forecast for windstorms and flooding on these long range predictions. Right, mountain snowed up on April 1st, and there is like no good news for this. So forecast in October was 70 to 110% of normal. December is 45 to 90% of normal. Both I did predict a delayed start to ski season, especially because my top analogs were very consistent, showing a delayed start. And once 1967 to 68 became my top overall analog year, that is one of the worst snow years on record at Timberline. There was not snow-tell data back then, so we don't know how the rest of the state played out in terms of actual snow water equivalent. But snow depth on April 1st was eerily similar to this year, so it proves that at least I could get the analog years kind of right. Now, a test site was 38% of normal. That's at the bottom. The Poochie lift at Timberline at about 5,300 feet or so. Timberline snow depth at the lodge is a little bit closer, 47% of normal. Latest start in years for the ski resort, and like Hoodoo had to close by mid-March and was barely scraping got by for the longest time. Ski Bowl closed even earlier. Mount Hood Meadows is closing early this year, so not a good year overall. So I know the December prediction was not popular with the skiers. The basin map overall, Mount Hood is right in the center of these three basins here. To the north of the Columbia, it fared a little better. You're going from absolutely no snow to, okay, you at least have some snow to melt off into the reservoirs, about 50 to 80% of average. But once you go south of the Columbia, and especially south of Mount Hood, the Willamette Basin, 10% of average. And the Ochoco Mountains, 2% of average. Ignore the 67%. That was all from yesterday's storm that rolled in. I'm recording this on April 2nd. I generally refuse to record this on April 1st to prevent any April Fool's type jokes. So, and on top of this, there wasn't really snow below 4,500 feet until yesterday in a lot of areas south of Mount Hood. One thing I will also note is that I noticed a communication error with how my analog tiers worked, because in terms of what I start out, these are all the tiers that I have for my mountain snowfall. So there's 7 tiers in total. So I was working with the 45 to 90% tier is what my analogs are showing. In the future, the actual 1/3 of all years is actually just below 90%. So in the future, I'm just going to call it below 90%. And then on the other side, which is what I did last year, it fell into the 110 to 180%. I worded it as 115% plus because I was extremely confident that that would happen. So in the future, I'm going to just have no upper end on these top and bottom ranges just for clarity purposes, because this was the lowest tier possible my analog years could come up with, and that 110 to 180% is the highest possible tier that my analogs could come up with. So I will count as an October partial hit. December is going to be counted as a full hit. It's a partial hit for October because of the fact that I pointed out the latest start in years for ski resorts, especially when going over the analog years showing that that was extremely likely. All right, and valley snowfall forecasted 2 to 8 inches or valley wide. Yeah, this is it's just a forecast miss. I don't know of any urban areas that even had snow beyond snowflakes in the air, which counts as a trace officially. But I will know I did say 0 to 2.5 inches last April, but again, I don't grade the April forecast usually, so yeah, this is depressing as a snow lover. Um, Pensacola, Florida beat us again in the snowfall department. That's all I have to say with that. All right, and looking at the scorecard, the December forecast, I had a pretty good recovery overall. It's as it stands now, it is going in as a 5.5 out of 7, assuming the water your rainfall totals come out as projected. And the October forecast still didn't do that bad. It's going to go in most likely as a 4 out of 7, assuming the water year or turns out the way I think it's going to turn out. We'll see when it comes to the conclusion of the water year. But that is it for this video. As per usual, I will post my way too early prediction. And for next winter this year, for any people who want to get hyped already for next winter. But until then, enjoy the drier and warmer weather that spring, summer, and early fall will bring. And stay safe out there. And lastly, take care.